Okay, hi everybody, welcome. This is the first seminar in our series for the Centre for Gender Studies at Lancaster University. We've started running these in term time online, so lots of different people from all over can join us. So the Centre for Gender Studies is a centre at Lancaster University. We look at kind of feminist teaching, a nice feminist community at Lancaster. I'm Laura Clancy, I'm co-director, and the other co-director is Shakti Nataraj, you can see on your screen. Just to flag that you can turn live captions on if you would like to. It's at the three dots at the top. And also to tell you about, sorry, I can't switch between all my screens. To tell you about the other two seminars that are coming up this term. You can see them on our Eventbrite if anyone would like to book on any of those. And there should be some more next term as well once we've organised those. So for this first seminar, we're really pleased to be joined by Hua Ma. So Hua is a PhD student in the Department of Film, Television and Media at the University of East Anglia. Her research interests lie in the areas of gender, feminism and beauty culture. Having completed her MA at the UEA in Gender Studies, she continues her MA research project into her PhD project. And this project examines young Chinese women's beliefs, attitudes and motivations regarding beauty practices. Her thesis analyses and discusses its findings regarding Chinese beauty practices in relation to interdisciplinary feminist theory and debate in terms of women's agency and choice. So Ha's going to speak for about half an hour. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. If everyone could just keep themselves muted while Hua is speaking, just because it can create a bad echo for other people. Thank you, Hua, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for introducing me. So I just share my slides first. Can you see it? It's all right? Yes.
Yes.
Can you see my slide? Okay, good. Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be here to share my research, and it's great to see many people and people who I know. Thank you very much to be here with me. And so today, the paper title called Inner and Out Beauty, Exploring Female Beauty in Contemporary China. So actually, this paper is a chapter from my PhD thesis, and then I edited it into a journal article, which has been accepted. So I hope you enjoyed today's talk and find it interesting. I have divided my talk into 4 sections. So firstly, I will talk about my research context, give you a brief history review of beauty practices in China. And then I talk about my literature review, which just show you some key debate within feminist literature in the West, in the global and also Chinese context. And then I briefly talk about my methodology and how I conduct my interviews. And then firstly, I will talk about my findings. And today I would like to share 4 aspects of my findings with you. So firstly, inner and out beauty are inseparable. Secondly, out beauty matters. And thirdly, inner beauty is more important than out beauty. And lastly, the discourse on inner beauty. So move to my introduction. In 2016, there were a variety beauty challenge targeted young women that went viral on Chinese social media. So I used 2 photos to show you some 2 beauty challenges. The first one on the left-hand side, you can see she's a Chinese celebrity called Yuan Shanshan. Back then, she was very popular, and she held an A4 sized paper in front of her waist. So this beauty challenge is called A4 waist challenge. Women will like to compare their waist size with the width of the A4 size paper, so about 21 centimeter. If women can hide their waist behind the A4 size paper, they will be very proud to post their photo on social media as a way to prove their beauty. So the second photo on the right-hand side, same. This is a beauty challenge where women put the cones on their collarbone to show how slim they are. And yeah, all right, okay. So you can see those beauty challenge really reinforce the rigid beauty standard in China and also intensify the beauty pressure for all the young women. Although Chinese women have a long history engaged with variety beauty practices, but there is some dramatically change in the 20th century. So I use several photos to illustrate those major changes for you to understand the context. So if you pay attention to the first photo, it's woman from Qing dynasty. If you pay attention to her feet, she had the feet, what we called 3-inch golden lotus feet. So the beauty foot bending was normalized during this period of time and perceived as a very important part of female beauty. However, after 1949, the new China founded. You can see I use 2 photos to show this type of a Maoist ideology. So women's social status increased dramatically, and women can hold a half sky was a popular slogan. However, it's problematic, but I'm not going to go into detail. So women in variety media or TV, film, or even posters, they were portrayed as strong as men. And you can see they were unisex clothes. And in the bottom, the second section photos, you can't really tell their gender. So the gender neutral discourse was promoted and was kind of this really illustrates Maoist idea of women's liberation and gender equality. So the concept of female beauty was attacked and also rejected by variety political discourse. So what was the female beauty during for communist perspective? So they thinking the ideal socialist worker was beautiful. Again, this situation has changed after 1979 economic reform. You can see this really changed Chinese society dramatically. All the young girls in the photo, you can tell that in the big cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, or Guangzhou, they live relatively similar lifestyle as Western women. So the concept of female beauty has re-emphasized in contemporary China. And so Chinese women paying a lot of attention to their beauty nowadays, which reflect in a marketing survey conducted in 2015. So over 57% female wearing a makeup daily and spend average 30 minutes on applying cosmetics. So although 57 seem not much women, but compared to socialist China, where women rarely wear makeup, this quite large number of women. And so those girls in the photos, they kind of really fit into this modern Chinese beauty standard, which we called 白瘦幼, literally translate as white, slim, and young. So if you want to be beautiful in contemporary China, you should have a slim body, youthful look, and fair skin. For the facial features, you should have large eyes with double eyelid and tall nose with small face, which is kind of like V-shaped face. So you can see those several photos really illustrate this kind of the concept of female beauty and beauty practices has changed dramatically. However, there's not much research have been conducted to understand young women's experience regarding their engagement with beauty practices, and also especially from feminist perspective. That's how my research fit into this. So this paper asked 2 questions. Firstly, how is the female inner and outer beauty understood in the experience of young Chinese women aged between 18 to 25 years? And does this beauty discourse have any social or political implications? Secondly, what is the relationship between the concept of inner and outer beauty, and how do participants negotiate those concepts to gain empowerment? So I will give you a brief review of a beauty culture of feminism in the West, in global and Chinese context. So beauty practices has been studied for a relatively long time in the West. So back in the 1970s, many feminists perceived beauty practices as oppressive. So more to the 1980s, the debate often centered around the term called cultural dupe, which a term suggests women engage in beauty practices as an unknowing victim and without agency. So, however, this towards the 1980s, there's cultural discourse turning point, which illustrated in Naomi Wolf's book called Fair with Fair, that when she analyzed the beauty culture, she emphasized on the notion of choice and empowerment. So you clearly see the concept of post-feminism has also shaped the beauty cultural studies. Well, when I refer to post-feminism, I refer to the idea that women now defined by their individuality, choice, and agency. So clearly, see, in 1990s, there are quite a lot of scholars adopt this position. They don't perceive women as passive victims anymore, and they think women, the beauty practices can be perceived as empowering and pleasurable. Well, it's problematic because in line with broader critiques of post-feminism, they think this analysis of beauty culture is kind of overstate women's agency and ignore the constraint of a patriarchal society. Well, that's why later on, many feminists try to move away from this framework. They try to kind of approach to beauty culture from constructive framework, which they try to figure out why, how women's choice are constructed within our society, why they choose to conform to the beauty culture. And again, currently, there's quite a lot of scholars try to introduce this idea or concept called aesthetic labor to expand our understanding of beauty culture, kind of like to move away from the analyze the beauty culture in terms of liberation or oppression. So you can see as I review, there's quite a lot of literature has been discussed about Western women's experience and also Western media, but with the globalization, the development of beauty industry and advertising or media industry, the beauty pressure is not exclusive to Western women. As you can see, women from different countries, religions, and races all face very similar issues. Well, in this regard, there's a need for research that kind of address the particular national context. Well, that's why I focus on Chinese context, which so when you think about the concept of inner out beauty, actually can trace back to ancient Chinese society, while Confucianism and Taoism, those philosophy often talk about those concepts as well. So Confucianism kind of emphasizes on the woman's morality, which is a characteristic fit with this idea of inner beauty, while Taoism emphasizes a woman's physical appearance and also attractiveness. So its characteristic fit within this concept of out beauty. So you can see, although we have those concepts back to Asian philosophy, but with current research, I noticed there's so many scholars has identified the importance of inner beauty as much as important as out beauty, but the literature rarely focus on address the concept of the inner beauty. So as a result, so they often focus on the out beauty because when they study cosmetic surgery or dieting, they often focus on women's appearance. So as a result, the concept of inner beauty has been marginalized. That's why I think my research or this paper, it not only try to address the importance of inner beauty, but also try to understand the complex relationship between the inner and out beauty and how my participants negotiate those beauty discourse in terms of these two concepts. So for my methodology, I sampled 20 Chinese young women aged between 18 to 25. I utilized in-depth interviews to kind of understand their belief or attitude and motivation towards beauty practices. So the reason for selecting this age group is because the existing literatures and also marketing survey showed that this age group, when they engage with beauty practices, is most prevalent in China. So I conduct my interview over the period of 3 months back to my hometown, Beijing, and just before COVID. And each interview lasts between 1 to 2 hours. And because my participants are all Chinese, so interview was conducted in Chinese. And later, after analyze, I translate into English. So more to my findings. As I said before, there's 4 major kind of like themes I want to talk about today. So firstly, inner and outer beauty are inseparable. Secondly, outer beauty matters. Thirdly, inner beauty is more important than outer beauty. And lastly, the discourse on inner beauty. So I will go through each theme and give you some examples from participant narratives to kind of illustrate those points for you to understand. So first theme, inner and outer beauty are inseparable. So unlike other studies who often focus on the preconceived notion of a female beauty, I began my study by asking participants to define the term of female beauty. So according to my data, it's revealed that participants often rapidly discuss the inner and outer beauty, even sometimes the question was not addressed the inner beauty. So for example, this is a conversation I had with my participant called Wen. So I asked her, do you think female appearance is important? So she said, I think female outer appearance is surely important, definitely important. And then inner beauty is surely important as well, because any beauty without inner beauty is just a skin without a soul. So it's kind of interesting that I didn't ask her inner beauty, but when Wen tried to answer my question, she felt the need to include the inner beauty, as if she only talked about all beauty is not enough for her to address the concept of female beauty. This also showed another example of a participant Ping, is when I tried to ask her, what is a female beauty ideal? And then Ping said, female beauty is not only the physical appearance, but also the inner beauty. And yeah, there's quite another examples. Because of time limitation, I couldn't share with you, but if you want to find out more, please read my paper. So more to the second theme, all beauty matters. So when my participant, so in this paper, when I refer to all beauty, is actually refer to women's physical attractiveness according to the mainstream beauty standard. So many feminists has found that, you know, the female beauty can be perceived as a form of currency and power under the patriarchal structure. So my participant also kind of agreed with this type of a statement. They think if women are beautiful, or they through engage with variety beauty practices become beautiful, they will more likely gaining social benefit. So when they talk about all beauty, the narratives often centered around how like all beauty enable them to gain social benefit. That could be like a everyday social interaction, dating, or hunting a job. So this example from Simpson, she said, I think if you look beautiful, it is easy for you to do things. For example, some trivialized things you could ask help from others, especially men. If you ask help from them and you look beautiful, it seems very convenient. I feel beautiful girls around me are always so lucky. So it's kind of interesting, like Simpson feel like beautiful, so they are so lucky because they can get help from others, especially men. So they're getting a lot of attention and help from men. And this type of benefit also related to kind of heterosexual women looking for a boyfriend, like Dear said here. Appearance is very important for women, especially from men's perspective. Men think it is very important. When they think of a girl, the first thing they consider is, you have to make me think you are good looking so that I will give you possibility of development with you. And then I will make a friend with you. So this idea of men like to evaluate women's quality largely based on their appearance is actually a viewpoint commonly shared by my participants. They all think men like to judge on women's appearance and evaluate women according to their beauty. So the second theme, inner beauty is more important than all beauty. So when I try to analyze the relationship between inner and outer beauty, I found it's actually quite a complex relationship. Because like I discussed before, they think outer beauty important, but when they have to compare those two concepts together, they often emphasize that inner beauty is more important than out beauty. Well, but that's not mean those two concepts in a polarized position, because they're also thinking all beauty important too. So like Xiaole said here, she tried to explain the relationship that for the mainstream beauty standard, maybe there is a template for this beauty. Every woman can come close to this template, but in fact, it is not really beautiful because this is a beauty on the outside. There's no beauty on the inside. So I think the most important thing is the inner beauty, and their inner beauty does not match the out beauty. So you can see it's kind of interesting that Xiaole expressed this idea. There is complete female beauty or true female beauty. Like if you want to have an inner beauty without out beauty, or you had an out beauty without inner beauty, you don't perceive as complete beautiful. So then you were thinking, okay, so there is kind of like inner and out beauty, both important for female beauty. But why my participant emphasized on the fact that they think inner beauty is more important? Well, this also is my question. Why I try to understand them. I was like, why they think inner beauty is more important when those two things are all important? So go through their narratives and analyze my data. I conclude two reasons. Firstly, because my participants, they are highly educated women, they also show they had a critical awareness towards beauty industry and like social media or beauty standard. And so I think they try to use this idea of inner beauty to really resist the pressure from all beauty. As I showed in the earlier introduction, you can see the beauty challenge is was very popular on Chinese social media. So there is really intensified pressure for the young woman to conform to the beauty standard. But so my participants, they don't want to conform, so they had to find a way to negotiate. So they're thinking by emphasis on inner beauty is maybe a good way to combat this all beauty pressure. And I will show you an example later to kind of let you fully understand this point. The secondly is, I think my participants, they'll kind of have this awareness how beauty system work. As you can see earlier, I said they all understand if you are looking beautiful in China, they're more likely to gain social benefit. But also they're aware the beauty standard, which is you have to be young, useful. So when women aging, when they're getting old, it's hard for them to gaining social benefit or attention from men. So that's why they still want to, if they want to feel beautiful, they have to kind of develop a different way to feel this beautiful. So I think they try to use the idea of inner beauty to develop their feeling, like when they're getting old, they still want to feel beautiful. Yeah. So here's the example. It's a really long quotation from my participant, but I would like to share their voice with you. So this is a kind of like I said, well, my participant, they really are critical, aware of those kind of beauty standard. They're not passive receiver, and they are kind of actively give their opinion out and reject those type of beauty standard promoted by social media. So this is participant Simona. She said, I have to admit, Chao Yueyang, Chinese female celebrity, is very pretty. She's actually in the center of the photo. So if you do not listen to her talking, you will think that she's pretty to look at. But once she started talking, I had to fast forward. I did not want to listen to her. Her image had a huge discount. In my mind, how can many fans like her? Is she beautiful? I think she's not beautiful at all. When those kind of words come out of her mouth, I think she's not beautiful at all. The way she talks is very poor quality. You can see Simona do not accept those type of beauty standards promoted by social media, as she thinks Chao Yue is lack of her inner beauty. Well, that's why she's not complete beautiful. Again, if you pay attention to Simona's the discourse she used, or the word discount she used, is quite interesting. The word she used, discount, translate in like Chinese called 打折, which this word suggests that women's beauty can be measured and quantified. So if you are only had a all beauty, well, inner beauty, your overall beauty will be discounted. So you can see now the inner beauty is not really liberate women. Although my participants like similar thinking, they could try to use the inner beauty to combat the all beauty pressure. But now inner beauty become a tool to regular women and also to place, to kind of judge on each other by using the idea of inner beauty. Well, I will discuss more later how problematic is the discourse of inner beauty. So move to the second point here. This is an example from participant Dear. Like I said before, they kind of like, on the one hand, they're aware of if they are looking beautiful, they're more likely getting social benefit or attention, especially the heterosexual women find a partner. And on the other hand, they're also aware this type of power isn't stable and is fragile, because when they're getting old, they will lose all the benefits they gained from the man. So this Dear said, if a person who praised me says that you are so beautiful today, I will feel that is a burden and it rests on me, which keeps me going. But I have a baggage that I cannot put up with, which makes me feel this way. So I was thinking that many young girls were given such a compliment when they were young, and it should be said that such compliment is like sugar water, and after they drink too much, they will be thirsty for more and more. You will always feel that you are not putting enough effort into your appearance and live a more and more twisted life. I think it may not be a good thing to continue thinking like this. If you lose the age bonus and gender bonus, you may come back and see it as poison. So you can see Dear put very metaphorically how she understands this beauty system. And she thinks that media try to promote all beauty for young girls, to encourage them to engage with variety beauty practices to become more beautiful is problematic and also is unhealthy for women. That's why she used the word poison to suggest this type of idea women cannot waste their time, energy, effort, or even money to master their beauty practices. Because when you're getting old, you will come to see, which she used a very interesting term if you see age bonus and gender bonus. So this is term actually refer to when women are young, they're more likely getting a social benefit or attention from heterosexual men. So that's often happen during the dating market. So young girl will be more popular and they're likely to gain more social benefit. But when they getting old, the like an old woman in China often stigmatized as devalued women. So you can see Dear feel like later on she expressed the idea that she feel when she was young she put too much effort on her outer beauty, but now she want to actually develop her inner beauty because she feel inner beauty is good for her like long-term personal development, and also she want to feel beautiful even when she over 30 years old. So this idea of a woman want to feel beautiful when they're getting old is also expressed by other participants. Like she tried to use example to show like she thinks her female professor is very beautiful because even I think her female professor over 50 or 60s, but participants think she's beautiful because she have the inner beauty. Even when her all beauty fade according to the mainstream beauty standard, but participants still thinking older women can be attractive. So you can see my participants not only talk about how they think about female beauty or inner beauty, they actually do generally feel this way towards older women. So, well, now you can see my participants feel, well, inner beauty is a good thing because the inner beauty helps them to combat the all beauty pressure and also enable them to feel beautiful when they're getting old. So why try to figure out, so what exactly is inner beauty? So move to the fourth last theme is discourse on inner beauty. because everybody try to promote this idea, inner beauty is so good for us, good for women, we should focus on inner beauty. Well, I try to understand, so what exactly the definition of inner beauty? When I try to analyze the data, I notice it's quite hard to define the inner beauty, because inner beauty is really individualistic and also vague. It's really can't pin down the idea of inner beauty, because they talk about all sorts different like personality or characteristics to explain their understanding of inner beauty. Or in the end, I found inner beauty also is not value free, because like you said, you see here, Huan, it really showed the different ideology within the concept of inner beauty. So Huan said, now the public opinion is very divided, saying either that a woman's career is particularly strong and she doesn't need a family, or like many of other people say that you are a little woman, 小女人, who pays attention to the family. So the term 小女人 is kind of referred to this traditional gender role that women are soft and gentle, more likely to depend on their husband to spend more time looking after the family and children. You can see from Huan's narratives, we can see there's two ideologies here. First is a neoliberalist value that promote women should be financial independent, have a successful career. And then also on the other hand, you can see this traditional Confucian idea of gender that women should be kept at home, should spend more time to look after their family. So they somehow in conflict, but this really shows that inner beauty is not value free. So far you can see, as I already focused the idea of although participants thinking inner beauty is good for them and is liberating and is empowering, but somehow because the discourse of inner beauty, you can't really pin down and it's not value free. So that's why I argue, however, that the discourse of inner beauty are not value free are influenced by a variety of dominant discourse such as state interest or beauty industry, and also I show the different ideologies. In this regard, inner beauty needs interrogation and cannot simply be perceived as a tool for women's liberation. Well, so there's limitation with my study. You can see my participants are very highly educated young women, and they are heterosexual and also come from very similar social economic background. Well, but it's kind of really offered an interesting insight for us to understand how young women defend the idea of female beauty. So thank you for listening. I see you at Q&A.
Thank you, Hua. That was brilliant, really interesting. So we've got about 20-25 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to come on the mic, if anyone wants to post them in the chat, I think either way, we don't mind. Yes, so Chalisa has the hand up.
So thank you for your presentation, because it has been really insightful about feminism in China and beauty. I have some questions around your findings. So you briefly mentioned something about age, like aging femininity. I just wonder whether there are some differences between the participants under 20 years old and participants who are around like 24, 25, or in their mid-20s. And another question is, have you seen some distinctions in terms of social class, about like participants who are from a middle class background versus those who are from an upper class background, for example?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your question. And it's really interesting. You touched like age and class issues. But yeah. So first question is, because I didn't really investigate older women, and also I think also because in China, the older woman's beauty seems dismissed in society and nobody interested in them. Even as you can see on social media, everybody talk about all the like young women's beauty standard and how young women engage with beauty practices. So that's why in my PhD thesis, I said it would be worth to really kind of study older women in China to understand how they negotiate with beauty practices. As you can see through my literature review, I showed you during the Communist Party time, and that group of women actually now is become older women. So I often wondering how they can like negotiate their beauty, because I have insight from one of the participants because she talked about her mother. Her mother grew up during the socialist China, so she mother did kind of like really you kind of like agree with the most ideology of women. She thinks women shouldn't wear any makeup, women shouldn't dress up themselves because that be perceived as slut from their perspective. So that's why even affect how my participant behave, because although she's young girl, she can like really influenced by her family, because her mother tried to keep telling her, oh, the beauty practice is bad, is evil, is you shouldn't do it. But at the same time, you can see on the social media, it's keep promoting the beauty ideal and try to expand the beauty industry. So yeah, I guess that's maybe pretty much I know about older women in China so far, but would like to do more in the future. And also in terms of a class, yeah, up class, I think this is quite tricky because in China, we don't have a very clear defined class system. And maybe I see my participant in the middle class, but then there's really variety debate about class system in China. As you know, we're a socialist country. We not really try to, like a Britain, you try to promote clearly a social structure. We don't have that. But yeah, so not quite sure. Maybe I try to find out for you in the future.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
really interesting about social class, the distinctions between those in China and in the West. So thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Michael was next, and then Tong, and then Jocelyn. Michael, is your question in the chat, or would you like to? Do you want me to read it out? Yeah, okay. So you addressed perceived benefits of being beautiful. Did you also look at perceived risks associated with beauty? So for instance, in terms of not being taken seriously professionally or in terms of harassment?
Thank you for your question. That's a really interesting one because I actually going to talk about there's quite like different situation I see in China and in the UK, because if you in the UK women put on too much makeup and people may not take her serious. But then when I ask my participant how about makeup and this says something very interesting, because they think if women don't put on makeup in China, they actually be stigmatized as being lazy and sick, and also not showing respect to others. So in Chinese context, or at least among my participants, they think women should put on makeup. And because that is a way to gaining respect from others in your workplace. So I have one participant, she said her experience in the workplace is, they had a very busy life. This 996 style of living in China is they work from 9 to 9 every day, 6 days a week. So she found really hard to put on makeup in the morning to go to work. So one day she decided she not want to put on any makeup. So she just turned into her meeting, and then her colleagues start asking her, "Are you okay today? You look very sick. Do you need to take time off?" And everybody around her try to give her the idea she's not healthy enough to do her job. Like they suggest she should go back home to rest. Well, I guess this is not the case in the UK. Yeah. Thank you. Hope that answered your question. Yeah.
Thank you. Tong said in the chat, thanks for this fabulous presentation. Could you explain more about the relationship between patriarchy and fair skin, young, slim beauty standard in China?
Patriarchy, fair skin. Yeah, so you want to talk about like the relationship between the patriarchal society and why they develop this type of beauty standard? I think okay. So yeah, I think this actually beauty standard, part of the beauty standard not only influenced by the West, but also really come from like Asian society, that women have a fair skin. It already exists in our society before we can like westernized. So in the past, if they think a woman have a fair skin, it shows she don't need to do labor job in the field, which is really kind of like showed the class distinction between rich women and poor women. So I guess that's how they develop this system. And also for young, women should be young. It's because I think according to the patriarchal structure, they want women to able to give birth. So if you are look young and look healthy, you're more likely to deliver a baby. So that's kind of like this idea of a beauty standard really come from the evolutionary perspective, that women have a young body and slim, healthy, so they're able to have baby. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Jocelyn, you've got your hand up.
Hi, yes. Thank you for a great presentation. It was really interesting. I had my question was around the concept of inner beauty, and if your participants talked about if that had any connections to how it was maybe expressed physically. So could they interpret maybe inner beauty in the way that someone looked? Did that sort of have any markers in terms of their aesthetic labor? And I'd like to know where we'll be able to find your article.
Okay, thank you. Oh, my article is in the Journal of Gender Studies, and my supervisor just told me this paper actually on the top list of most read paper in 2022. So if you go to the Journal of Gender Study and to go to the most read section, you can see my paper on the top. Yeah. So thank you for everyone's support. I'm really, really overwhelmed by many people found my research interesting. So, back to your point, you were asked about the aesthetic labor, the relationship between the inner beauty and women's appearance. Yeah.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, I muted myself. Yes. I was wondering how it might, if participants thought that it was expressed in a particular way, or if they could recognize it or see it.
Yeah, that's you really ask a good question, because I try to not include the complex layer of my finding into this talk. There's another layer which participants try to express as qizhi. Is that term which I found really interesting. I can't really translate into English because it really shows the relationship between inner and outer beauty. And they think the qizhi can be perceived or can be seen, but at the same time, you can't really define it because you can't really see it. It's like an aura type of thing. So I think that qizhi is more to do with like gender performativity, like women's femininity. If you can like carry certain feminine posture or feminine movement, that could be classified also as your part of an inner beauty. Well, again, I think there's need more research to address this term of qizhi, which I was thinking writing a paper on it. So yeah, I think maybe I address it in the future, but now I guess this pretty much is to show the qizhi is actually a term which can link between the inner and outer beauty, but it's much complex than what I understand now. Yeah, thank you.
That links as well, Fata. I wanted to ask you a question, and you've kind of just suggested about this, about translation. So you said that you did the interviews in Chinese and then analysed them and then translated them. And I was going to ask you, was there anything that just didn't translate, that just, that you could analyse in Chinese, but was really difficult to then analyse it kind of in an English context?
Thank you for your question. That really showed my frustration, which is in this question. Because, as a feminist, we try to really preserve this participant voice. And at the same time, I try to communicate to the large audience, like Western audience or globally, it's really hard sometimes to translate. I found really frustrated because when I talk to my supervisors, I realize there's quite a lot of a cultural meaning within the terms. Because before I talk to them, I take it for granted. Because I'm Chinese, I just understand straight away without an explanation. But then when my supervisor, Sue, she's a British woman, and she read my work, she started, what do you mean? And I said, yeah, I mean this. Don't you know? She's like, I don't know. So because the interaction with Sue, I realized, oh, there's quite a lot of things I need to explain in more details because people not from Chinese context, they may not understand. So that's why I guess I kept some Chinese character or Chinese word in my research because I feel like I want to be able to bridge the reader from China and also from the West, so they'd be both able to understand my research. But there's so many examples. I give you one example is a word called pass by. My participant said, oh, for my look, I think I just passed by. But this actually is interesting. In China, if you call yourself pass by, like 路人, I think the girls in the room will be no. If you call yourself, oh, I'm look very 路人, it means you're not attractive. You just look average. You not attract any attention from the group. But pass by in the English, it not translate like this. It's like just talk about people on the street passing by. Yeah, so that's just an example for you.
I guess this is part of the issue with kind of very kind of Western centric publishing as well, in terms of, you know, we don't really account for this, do we, in terms of how, you know, different journals are structured and different books are structured and stuff. That kind of, it's very English centric still. I'm going to go to Chalisa in the chat, and then Shakti's got a question. So Chalisa has said, what have you discovered in your findings regarding preferred beauty styles in China? And then she's put in brackets white, Western, Korean, Japanese and or Chinese styles, etc.
Beauty style in China. I think, thank you for your question. I think that's really interesting. You talk about style, which I didn't talk about in my paper because it's much complex. Because I noticed this is, you know, when I went back to China, I thought they have very rigid beauty standard. Women should look a certain way. But I noticed now there's many beauty industry or people working in the social media, they try to promote this alternative beauty standard. Like by suggest you should develop your personal style, like you should have a French style or American style, this type of thing. And so I think actually I feel like, you know, they're not being generous with women's look. They not try to lose the control of beauty standard, but they try to selling product, try to selling the clothes, because they feel if they encourage every girl to feel they can be beautiful or they can be certain style, no matter how your facial features look like according to the mainstream beauty standard, you always can find your style to enable you to feel really beautiful, cool. So I think the alternatives of style is, again, it's not really a to do with the gender equality, but to do with the try to selling beauty product and clothing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Shakti?
Yeah, thanks so much, Hua, for an amazing paper. So I had two questions. One was actually picking up on what the others were saying about inner beauty, or you said chijia, is that the, but that isn't related to inner beauty, but it's one of the concepts structuring it, it sounds like. But anyway, I thought it was fascinating how you give a lot of attention to the terms that come out from your participants, which you didn't introduce in the interview. And so this concept of inner beauty, I just wondered if it had like a longer or larger social life in China, like in the words that they were using, you know, like is it you know, an existent maybe conceptual framework or ontologies of beauty there. And the second question was you'd mentioned about your issues with the kind of post-feminist neoliberal presumption of agentive consumption of like women consuming beauty products purely on agency, and you had said you wanted to complicate that kind of binary of agency versus you know, submission to beauty. And so yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, especially in light of the cultural concepts like Chizhe or like the other concepts that are not translatable. Like how would such a concept like agency and submission, like how does that map onto your participants' ways of understanding social action, you know?
Thank you very much. Yeah, you talk about my struggling of my framework, because you know when I first read this paper, I actually tried to talk about as a feminist community. I realized why I found the inner beauty concept from my participant. When I tried to read more feminist literature on this term of inner beauty, there's actually not much feminists talk about this term, and they may like use different term like femininity or other way to discuss this idea, but I think it's still very different concept. As you can see here, the prompt, my participant just talk about inner beauty, without any kind of give it the clues. So I think that's why when I try to write paper at the beginning, I try to argue that why feminist community have ignored this idea of inner beauty as a framework to understand the beauty culture, and why there's not much literature discuss this. When I search on internet just by the term inner beauty, there's not much literature about it. So I try to argue that when feminists doing kind of study beauty culture, they have many of them, maybe I haven't found out other, many of them try to focus on this preconceived notion of beauty. Like they just thinking beauty is related to all beauty, because they try to criticize the patriarchal structure, create this certain beauty standard to control women. But actually, they didn't really try to dig out how women think about beauty, how women feel about beauty, or how they understood beauty. So I think there's not much literature to discuss this aspect, which I think, for me, I think this work is important, is I actually want to address the concept of inner beauty. I feel like it's worth to discuss in the West as well. I know there's many kind of online articles talk about inner beauty, but I don't see many literature in the academic talk about this specifically inner beauty. So that's my framework. And then you talk about the agency. Well, that's a great question, because that's all about my thesis. My whole thesis, it try to engage with post-feminism kind of post-feminism aspect of emphasize women's agency and notion of choice. And I notice it's so complicated than the binary approach. It's not like a woman empowered or woman oppressed. It's much more complex, which is shown in this paper. And because in my thesis, I try to engage the debate whether post-feminism exists in China context. I found yes, because my participants actually, when they talk about beauty practices, they try to emphasize on this idea of pleasure. They didn't talk about, oh, while doing makeup, I feel so happy, or while doing this, I feel so happy. So the pleasure and the choice is often emphasized during their narratives. So they talk about this idea of, oh, I'm doing makeup for myself, not for men. So you clearly see this type of post-feminist discourse can be traced within the narratives. But at the same time, I notice when I ask them about their initial reason to engage with beauty practices, there's no post-feminist discourse. They didn't say, I'm choose to do it because I want to do it. They actually try to talk about, oh, because when I went to university, there's so much social pressure or social expectation for young women to start wearing makeup at uni. And they see all their roommates and people around them start wearing quite a lot of like makeup or engage with the different beauty practices. So they want to fit in. So fit in is really important concept for them within this initial engagement with beauty practices. So you can see it's not very simple. I try to explain my 70,000 word thesis in 1 minute, but I don't think I'm doing a great job, but that's pretty much it. Thank you.
No, it's really rich work. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got time for a very quick response just to this last question. So, were there significant differences in the ways that participants conceptualized inner beauty?
Yes, thank you. I think that is, but I feel like it's so hard to talk about because, like I said, it's very individualistic. Some participants talk about, oh, I want to look after a cat. I want to look after animals as a way to develop her inner beauty. And I was like, okay, so you want to be a nice person by looking after animals. Also, other participants talk about, oh, actually, I just want to have a family. I want to be a good mother. Again, you see, this is very significant different how they understand inner beauty. So for them, I don't know where they get idea from. So I guess it will be really worth to do a research in the future for me to find out. I kind of purposely address the concept of inner beauty to really evaluate and kind of investigate exactly how they think about inner beauty. Because my project was kind of not focused on inner beauty, but focused on female beauty overall. So I didn't really go into the depths to ask them about inner beauty. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I think we're out of time, so thank you so much. Wow, that was, I mean, it's just, there's so much there to unpack, and I think we could talk about this all night. And congratulations on your very highly read paper. It's very well deserved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming, everyone. Remember, there are 2 more seminars in this series if anyone else is interested in any of the talks. And thank you so much, Hua, for giving that talk. Thanks, everyone.